To get to the Alcatraz Island from San Francisco, it only takes like around 15 minutes. Dentro del bote.
Once the social hall, back when this was Fortress Alcatraz, later military prison Alcatraz, later Supermax penitentiary Alcatraz. So we're going to work our way up this hill. There was a newspaper reporter who came out here in the 1880s. He wanted to see, well, how did people survive out here, even before it was a prison? And he wrote about a place that if you were to take these stairs, you would walk through the front door of one of the houses that was Officers Row. Now this newspaper reporter, he got to about this point, he said, quote, "Along the roadside, as it nears the summit, are a succession of charming Gothic cottages, each occupied by the commanding officers at Garrison Alcatraz, each with a little garden plot. The voices of merry children make the air musical on Alcatraz." This is what he's talking about here. Because as the military was fortifying Alcatraz, big brick defensive walls, granite stones, they're also bringing in soil to this bird poop encrusted rock. They're bringing in soil from Angel Island behind you, from San Francisco, in order to make these huge artificial hills to hide cannons behind. But we have to remember there's kids out here. There's military spouses. They don't need the dirt to hide a cannon behind, but they need the dirt to make some beautiful gardens out here. They introduce hundreds of varieties of plants that you see today. With that imported soil, stealing away bucket by bucket at a time to make some beautiful gardens out here. This building right behind me would have been your first stop, your first apartment, 25 bucks a month in the 1930s, about 500 bucks a month in today's money. Now here, you could bring your family out here. Your children could play right behind me. Roller skates, basketballs, handballs, pet parakeets, and this gated playground right behind me. Imagine. But again, this is a Supermax island at this point. Kids had to be kind of about a 300-foot exclusion zone around this island. Big warning signs around Alcatraz. Any unauthorized vessel that got too close, well, guards in the guard tower could fire warning shots. Supermax penitentiary after all, right? Well, some of the Alcatraz children, these are children of guards out here, they would sneak down to the warning signs, down on the rocky shore, beside the face of San Francisco. If you were to take this path, you'd end up down at the shoreline where these children were, and they'd go down there and they would persuade, entice, convince, wave over local sailors, "Hey, come over to Alcatraz, we're just kids after all," hoping to hear the crack of a gun, the smell of gunpowder coming from the guard towers, as their dad would fire warning shots across the bow, rip a sail in half, anything to get a little bit of fun and attention on Supermax Alcatraz.
The morgue. Although death on the island was seldom, both the USA military and the Federal Bureau of Prisons had to deal with the reality of death on Alcatraz. In 1910, the military constructed the morgue to store the bodies of the deceased. Built at the entrance to a Civil War area tunnel, the thick brick lined walls that once kept gunpowder cool and dry became ideal for holding bodies prior to transport off the island. The military called these islands the Rock for a reason. It is composed entirely of hard gray waxed sandstones, which does not lend itself to burials.
When you first made that walk up here, just like you did when you first entered that cell house you would have been given a work assignment right away. Now, not a work assignment, not initially, in the prison factories where you could make a small wage, 9 to 19 cents an hour, making cargo nets for the Navy, sewing Army uniforms. Now, when you first arrived here, you're given a maintenance job. This is unpaid position. It could be sweeping up the cell house dock. It could be repainting empty cells in that cell house. Now, during this era, men who are making that journey across the bay are not out here necessarily for the crimes that they commit. You are sent to ALCATRAZ for your behavior, your conduct in another federal institution. Men who arrived here on ALCATRAZ, in most cases, were already serving hard time at other federal penitentiaries. Your sentence on ALCATRAZ does not count. When you're paroled off ALCATRAZ, you're paroled back to your original federal penitentiary. This is in between punishment. So for this gentleman, Elliot Michener, he gets a 30-year sentence for counterfeiting, trying to make his own $10 bills. And he gets sent to United States Penitentiary Leavenworth in the middle of the country. And there he tries to escape. Now, if you try to escape another federal institution, you're going to get transferred here to ALCATRAZ, more or less. Now, he gets out here to serve that extra time here on the island. He's terrified of coming here. He's heard horror stories from men who have been transferred back to Leavenworth, Kansas from ALCATRAZ. Maybe some of them were true, maybe some of them not so true. But he gets out here, and his reality is just a little bit different. Now, this is the recreation yard. If you were to go on the other side, as you can today, you can march down into the recreation yard. Now, if you were here incarcerated in the Supermax era, you were only recreating 2 days out of the week, folks. Dominoes, bridge, handball, shuffleboard. 5 days out of the week, you're going to the rec yard to line up for your work assignment. Long yellow lines, and at the end of these yellow lines, it say glove shop, rubber mat shop, laundry, dock duty. Now, Elliot Michener, when he arrives here, he doesn't make a right turn into the prison factories. He makes a left turn on the wind-swept rocky cliffs on the other side of the recreation yard. Now, his job, his maintenance job, is collecting stray handballs that have fallen over the recreation yard wall, and he's got to collect them in buckets. Now, being on that side of the island on a windy day is like sticking your head out of a speeding car, right? The wind's awful. And when he gets out there, he sees something that's not a handball. Right? Keys. Not just any keys, these are guards' keys. These 2 keys, you can open up pretty much any door on this island. So if you are Elliot Michener out here, and you found these keys, what would you do? Right? I know what you might be thinking. Right? Honest visitors today. Maybe you've had a single moment in your life that's transformed the rest of your life. His moment isn't taking them and running, as you might expect. He returns them to a guard. Right? Now, he's rewarded for his honesty. He just doesn't quite realize it yet, because the prison administration, they have an idea for Elliot Michener. Somebody that can be at least somewhat trusted, somebody that might be worth giving a chance, at least in their eyes. So Elliot Michener, he's made into not the first, not the last as we know, but one of the main inmate gardeners out here, as they call them.
Here's where you get access to the inside of the ALCATRAZ prison, and you are provided a recording tour. This is offered in several languages like Spanish, French, English. This was the first stop for the inmate, where you were provided your uniform. And next to it are the showers, where they will shower. The inmates here, they did not have any privacy. They will take showers all together. Alcatraz opened its door in 1934. In these walls lived the most dangerous inmates. This block was called Broadway, and it was one of the first stops of the inmates. They will walk along these hallways while the other inmates will start yelling at them, doing jokes, while the new inmates will walk through here naked. Prison cells were very small. They only had a bed, a little table, and a sink. As a new inmate, when you will get to your new cell, you will find a booklet of all the rules of the prison. The lights will be turned off at 9:30 p.m. and everything was so dark. It is said that some inmates will sleep with their eyes closed, and you will feel fear. This was a recreational area, and this was a privilege. Block D was the isolation area, or called the treatment unit, and it was reserved for unusually dangerous or violent inmates. Men received food and health care, but they were confined to their cells 24 hours a day. A stretch in D block could last a few days or several years, depending on the offense. The 6 closed front cells were used for the most severe disciplinary problems. Treatment in the hole, this was called the hole, sometimes included total darkness and a restricted diet. It usually lasted several days, but never more than 19. Few inmates ever saw the inside of the famous called the hole. An inmate tells a story that he invented a game simply to retain his sanity. He will say, "I will tear a button from my coveralls, then fling it into the air, turn around and circle several times, and with my eyes closed, get on the floor on my hands and knees and search for the bottom. When it was found, I will repeat the routine over and over until I was exhausted, or my knees were so sore that I could not continue." This was a library, and believe it or not, the inmates also were able to even take courses at the university. One of the inmates took a course at the University of Michigan, but all of this was a privilege. This was a visitation area, and as you could see, there was only a tiny, small glass window that will separate the inmate from their family or anybody that will visit him. This tour I took was during the day, but there's also a tour that it costs a little bit more money that is in the evening. In June 11th, 1962, using the unlikeliest of supplies, Frank Morris and the brothers John and Clarence Anglin made the most creative escape attempt in the history of Alcatraz, placing dummy heads made of soap, cement, and paint under their blankets in the middle of the night. The escapees crawl out of their cells through the small vents, scaled the utility corridor to the roof, slid down a stovepipe, and crept to the shoreline. The three men had reached the bay. As they slipped into the water using a raft fashioned out of a raincoat, they met an icy current rapidly ebbing out to sea. They were never seen again. You have a picture that shows the escape route, and it says that once inside the narrow utility corridor, the men silently climbed 3 dark stories of slippery pipes and wooden planks to the roof. Moving along the roof, they dropped to the ground. Then they climbed a fence, passed under a closed guard tower, tumbled down a rocky cliff, and scrambled to shore. This was the dining room, and it was called that it was the most dangerous place in the Alcatraz prison. And you know why? Because a spoon, a knife, or fork could become one of the most dangerous weapons in this prison. This was also called gas chamber because this area had tear gas that thankfully it was never used, otherwise the guards and the inmates wouldn't made it out alive. At the end of the meal in the kitchen, they will make a count of the silverware, but there were always missing either a fork, a spoon, or a knife. It was hard to maintain the island, and it would cost a lot of money to do this, and apparently the island was known as almost impossible for the inmates to escape. So in 1963 they decided to close Alcatraz prison. Oh. Wow. Wow. It took me around 2 hours to explore the island, but you can stay as long as you want. Just make sure that you know the time that the last boat leaves from the Alcatraz island back to San Francisco.